welcome to a pop-up episode of the Gooners podcast, episode 5.29. And we are pleased today to be joined at a very special time of the year called silly season by someone who's not silly, but he does know what he's talking about. Chris Wheatley, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Cheers, guys. Nice to be here.
We're moving
Thanks
you
for
up to
having
the
me.
show. Thanks for having us. We're moving you up to the top here on the screen because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions and things posted by our users, and they obscure whoever's on the bottom, and we don't want that to happen to you. So I notice you've got a picture frame behind you. That's going to stay on the wall?
Yeah. Oh, you're referring to our good friend Charlie Watts. Yeah. Hopefully, it's not with nails, so I'm not sure. It could actually fall down, but yeah, this is actually a shirt of a player I know, but he's not an Arsenal player. So
we don't want to be known as derivative, but if it would happen to fall off, make sure it happens in the next 45 minutes. So appreciate you coming on with us again tonight. Quite the career in journalism, and we'll go through that in just a second. But we asked Charlie Watts last week, and he told us of his youth and Goonerdom. You've just mentioned something to me off the air, but I was going to ask you if this is a career covering Arsenal, or if it's a career on top of a dream as far as being a Gooner from youth. So tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, no, I think for me it is a dream. I started my own. Well, I guess I became an Arsenal fan when I was around 7 years old. I went into my cousin's house. I think it was around Christmas time. And he was showing me around, and his bedroom had a poster of Dennis Bergkamp, and I had no idea who it was. And I asked, who is this guy? And he just replied, "The Iceman." And from then on, I was so curious. I had no idea what the Iceman meant. Eventually, obviously, found out it was Dennis Bergkamp. And yeah, I mean, I started supporting Arsenal really around the kind of 2005, that FA Cup final win against Man United, the 0-0, the penalty shootout, the game which we, deserved to lose, but somehow managed to win on penalties, Jens Lehmann saving from that Scholes penalty. And yeah, from then on, I wanted to become a journalist from a young age. I think at the age of 14, I started my own website, an Arsenal website called Gooner Talk.
I got to ask you about that. I knew we were going to go.
I know
there.
What you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
We know a guy, and I just want to know: are you friendly? Are there barristers and lawyers involved? I mean, what's the deal there?
There should be. No, I'm joking.
Because I'm not gonna say that Owen and I would take sides.
But we're definitely on your side.
Yeah, but we're definitely on your side.
Yeah, no, look, I started the website like over a decade ago, so I definitely had the name first, but it's not an issue for me. I think I did have an issue maybe a few years ago when I was on my blog every single day and I saw that there was like a rival name, but I don't really care anymore. And it's great that there's so many Arsenal blogs, channels, YouTube channels, and everything out there. I mean,
is it really though?
I mean, yeah, no, it's great.
Sometimes I'm not so sure that it's easy to say that, but I'm not so sure that's the case. Ourselves included.
The diversity of opinions is great to have, but I think it makes it more interesting, like to be a fan as well. Because if there's someone you don't like, if there's a journalist you don't like, you can go and read someone else. You can go to a different YouTube channel, and I think that's a great thing to have.
Do you not think that it possibly promotes tribalism now more so than in the past?
I think it depends.
Like tribalism within the fan base, different factions following different people,
No, it's a good point you make, but I think for me, I see it as a positive that so many different fans are able to start something from scratch. And I think like what you guys are doing is fantastic as well. And I saw the charity stuff you've done in the past, which that is great, and there's not many other people doing that. So I think for me it's a positive, but I see what you mean about the tribalistic side of things. I think on social media we see that a lot, especially Twitter. Like I posted a few tweets about Mesut Ozil earlier. I've already had like death threats in my Instagram messages, but people on social media
I don't mean to laugh
passionate.
That's not funny at all. It's just unbelievable.
No, but look, people on social media, I understand it, are very, very passionate about the players, the teams, and nowadays players are bigger than clubs. And I'm sure we'll get on to talking about Mesut later on, but in terms of his like social media following, he is bigger than most football teams. The most followed player in the Premier League, and he hasn't played since March, which is it's amazing that he's kept his brand so strong during these times as well. So
I think his brand's gotten stronger because of his ability to kind of play the victim a little bit, but that's my opinion. The discussion of brands and being bigger than football clubs it makes me want to, like, my blood pressure boils when I hear that. But that is the age we live in. Football.London is Football.London not like the Hale End or La Masia of football journalism? I mean, friends of the podcast, James Benge, Laith Youssef. I mean, you go through Football.London and your career's made, apparently. Good place to work. I mean, you're there now, so I might as well ask.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Of course, it's a fantastic place to work, and I started in, I think, October time. Before that, I started a company. I was working with Mesut, funnily enough, like a social media and marketing company. So we had a few players at Arsenal and other European teams. Basically advising them on social media and PR, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of ironic that's one of the things I think we're going to be talking about. But in terms of Football.London, it's a great place to work, and we've got some great people there as well. I think the team is really important, and fantastic opportunities as well that I get to go to the games. I know how lucky I am to go to the games at the moment when fans aren't allowed in. So hopefully I can do it justice by reporting on the games in the right way, and I try and do my best. Well,
you did it. I mean, the site does I don't know if it's called a site paper, but I mean, the Football.London did a great job in covering the summer tour last year. I mean, it was shocking to us because, I mean, maybe it shouldn't have been so shocking that we got media credentials, given that only maybe 3 or 4, the Sun sent one person, the Mirror sent who. And maybe one other, and then there was James from Football.London, and you would have thought maybe more people would have been covering it, but it was it was just nice to see that level of coverage throughout the entire summer tour. Chris Davison's in the chat. Excellent work, Chris. Good interview with Chris. It's kind of a Chris situation there, and if you haven't seen that, check out either one of their Twitter feeds. I'm sure you can get a link to the interview. Well, you've been breaking lots of news and behind the scenes things, and I think Owen wants to focus more on some of the the transfer ins and outs. Mm-hmm. I've got to tell you, anyone that's been watching the last month or so, since a particular article came out about a rift in the dressing room, I've been on this what others call a conspiracy theory. What do you call it? Just, constantly talking about it, to the point where we had a website where I think I printed out pictures of people and we decided which ones to rip up and which ones to not. Kia got ripped up, by the way. But I tend to believe that, let me say this. A month ago, right after the loss against Burnley, that was the Aubameyang own goal game, the Xhaka red card game, at or near the absolute bottom of our season so far. News comes out of a rift in the dressing room. Luis not talking to Arteta. Some of the older players, the Willian, Socrates, maybe a little bit of Mesut. I mean, they're just kind of an older versus younger dynamic where Arteta was being undermined by certain people, and I don't want to use the word bought into it. I believe it because, I mean, to me, that level of play from the players that we have, from the experience and the pedigree, could only be explained by an issue with mentality and solidarity. Because I thought the talent was there, and I think we're seeing now that the talent was there. So a month on, I guess the question is, what's your reporting on that a month later? And, am I right, or is Owen and Andy right? I mean, someone has to win.
I was on your side. Sorry, Chris, but go on ahead. I was on your side.
Yeah, no, that article at the time was obviously after the Burnley game, I think, as you said. It was a difficult situation for me because the timing of the article, I saw a lot of people kind of ask about it, like, why have you chosen this time? It's like the perfect time, isn't it, to post an article? So people were suggesting that it's clickbait and that kind of stuff. But this is information I kind of had for a couple of weeks. I was kind of sitting on. I wasn't sure whether to post it or not. The David Luiz thing as well, had to be a bit careful with that. And I felt like I maybe should have toned it down a little, because it was, I mean, I didn't make him look great. And, you know, it came from a very good source inside the club. So I know for a fact that it's true. And within minutes after posting it as well, I had one of the big influential agents kind of calling me up, telling me to get rid of the article. I'm sure you can guess who it was. But
is he named after a car?
Potentially, it could be.
It was Chevrolet Anderson.
But look, this is the difficult decisions you have to make, and I'm still relatively young-ish, I think, for like 27 this month or in a couple of weeks, and I think it's one of those difficult things to decide whether or not to go with that kind of story or not. And I went with it because you know, I verified my sources and I believe that information was correct, and I still stand by that, because the change in form, the upturn in form, happened at the Chelsea game. I think it was the Chelsea game which really was fantastic, and you know, the way that the players kind of turned things around. But the introduction of Emil Smith-Rowe, Gabriel Martinelli, you know, these youngsters coming back into the team, that is clearly what made the difference. You know, the way those guys play, it's like infectious. You know, Mikel Arteta always talks about the enthusiasm, the energy that Martinelli has. And the same with Smith-Rowe, the tracking back. You know, he's not really a number 10. He's a central attacking midfielder. He plays all over the place. And I think that's what Arteta likes. So, I stand by the article. And I'd say that the biggest reason for the upturn in form is a mixture of the young players, you know, coming up to the fore when they were really needed. And as well, Arteta kind of had his hand forced, because I think it was Willian who was out with sickness. So he kind of had to play. I know he said that he would have, that his hand wasn't forced, but I think it kind of was. He probably would have started Willian otherwise. But, you know, it was great to see the youngsters play.
Chris, the weird thing is, though, that the solution seemed so obvious from the outside to the woes that we were having. So if there's dressing room just unrest, if it's so clearly defined among a pack of players who are kind of just collecting a paycheck and seeing out their careers and don't really care about Arsenal 2 years from now, as you've stated and as I believe it to be, why up until the Chelsea game is he still picking those players every game? And we, you know, Martinelli is a different story, because as soon as he was really ready to play, he played. Maybe even prematurely in some minds, but you know, but why, you know, Willian and Luiz every single game, especially Willian, and not do, if those players were conspiring against him, if they were potentially leaking information about private things going on behind the scenes.
Let me, sorry to cut in, but I have to say.
No, you may not, you didn't say that directly.
Those players, I'm not saying those players have leaked anything or behind anything like that, because I don't have contact with David Luiz or Willian.
I didn't mean to imply that you had said that. It's
no, just in case, because I know some people might think that.
Then maybe that's why Mainsley is. Maybe that's why Maitland-Niles is never playing. I mean, who knows? But if that's the case, though, he didn't do himself any favors by continuing down that. You know, and it almost feels like maybe his hand was forced before his hand was forced in a different direction. Because, I mean, people are calling for his head based on that. And honestly, had he not come out of the festive period with such a quick turnaround, I think people beyond the ones that even still are would be. And so it's just a weird dynamic. And I think that probably led to a lot of people thinking that the unrest is hard to get their heads around, because, you know, why would Arteta why would he not just put his foot down and make the changes?
But
I think it's difficult.
Was Mikel Arteta aware that was the sort of the thinking that I was going through, was that, this rumor may have, as you say, Chris, come from your source, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Mikel Arteta knows that these are facts, that these players have an issue with him directly. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's quite possible. It's quite possible that he doesn't know that one particular player isn't getting on with him or has a certain opinion. That is, of course, because he's managing 22 players. He's got a whole squad of players to manage. I think with Mikel Arteta, he's had such a difficult job in his first managerial role, managing really big egos and different relationships, and excluding players from the squad and having to pick certain players. It's been very challenging for him. I think he's almost come out of it, maybe not unscathed, but he's done okay. He's won an FA Cup, and he's still here now, so he's done okay. I think someone like David Luiz, I think he's a good player. He's a good defender. We know that he's a leader in the dressing room. I think with David Luiz, his issue is that he doesn't like to be on the bench. But what footballer wants to be on the bench? So I think that's normal. But he's the kind of player who wants to play every single week.
Then stop getting red cards, and you won't be on the bench.
But regardless, he's one of the players set to leave this summer. So when his contract expires, so it's not, in the short term, it might be a small issue, but in the long term, he's not going to be here much longer. And I'm not saying that he's the creator of all problems at Arsenal. At the time, it was something that I was told. As far as I know, there's no issues at the moment. Well, you can see that the team are playing well, but I think Mikel Arteta has got a good hand on the squad as things stand. But, things change in football all the time, the same with transfers. So it's normal.
See, just with this one, Chris from Frito, who signed Willian, was it Arteta, Edu, Josh? And it's not necessarily that question that I would like to ask of you. It's something that I've seen on Twitter today. I can't remember the source. Forgive me for forgetting, but it was regarding sort of the seniority of the positions at the club at the minute, and it was that Mikel Arteta in his managerial role now is actually above Edu, that Edu reports to Mikel Arteta. In terms of the hierarchy structure, is that true? And what sort of format is that structure in at the minute?
Yeah, I think that was a report that came from Mundo Deportivo in Spain this morning, where they said that Arteta's reporting to Edu, like you just said. And as far as I know, that isn't true. Obviously, when Mikel Arteta took that manager title in the summer, I think some people were questioning it, but a lot of people were happy that he got it because Arsenal just won the FA Cup. I think some people saw it as almost like a promotion. I don't think, from what I've been told, that his role has changed that much. What I have been told recently by agents who are working closely with Arsenal is that Edu has a lot of work on his hands, and he needs help. I think that's the biggest thing. And people have said that he needs help because since the departures of Raul Sanllehi and Hus Fahmy, which was quite recent, he's assumed all this responsibility. And I think it was Arsblog wrote an article questioning whether he's done it on purpose, perhaps. And maybe a cynic would say that he might have done it on purpose. I don't know. My guess was that it's possible because then, he can kind of get the targets that he wants. There's no kind of external or internal influence other than Mikel Arteta, who he has a good relationship with. So it's an interesting one. I think with the question there, with the Willian signing, I know that Arteta and Edu have followed Willian for a long, long time. They both really like him and they both wanted to sign him. And I think it was Raul at the time. Obviously, they did the deal with Kia. Kia said to me that Willian had offers from elsewhere, from the MLS. I think it was Miami. They offered him more money. That's what he says. Of course, no, we've got no way to verify that. But I think as well, he mentioned to me that Willian is not on more money than he was on at Chelsea. And whether that's relevant or not, I mean, he's still on a lot of money. So
yeah, there's this narrative that we basically paid a transfer fee, but just funneled it into his wages and agent fees, and he's going to end up being a £20 million investment, even though we didn't pay a transfer fee for him. And that's a lot for a 32-year-old. and as we've seen, it doesn't seem to be. I mean, is there any getting out of that, even if we wanted to at this point? Is there any possibility that he's not starting next season with this club with that kind of contract?
I think Arsenal would have to take a big hit on the contract, which would cost a lot of money. And in these times, and you've seen with Mesut Ozil, like how difficult it is to get a player out of a contract, especially if that player is happy or wants to stay at the club or wants to see out their contract. Because when you, like, as we all know, like if you have an employment contract, you know, you're tied to it. It's very difficult to get someone out of that contract. And I think with Willian, it will be difficult. But he has probably one of the best agents or intermediaries, whatever you want to call him, in the business in terms of like having connections and being able to get him a move to another club. He could easily get him a move. It just depends on whether Willian would want to leave London when clearly he's very happy in London and wants to stay. I don't know if he would change his mind after the season that he's had, but I guess it's up to the player, really, isn't it? I'm not too sure what the player thinks at the moment.
Absolutely. Got a couple more questions from the chat that are kind of about club dynamic, and then I want to make sure we leave time for some maybe rapid fire on some transfer in and outs. From Drago, Bulgarian Gooner, how does a club like Arsenal allow this embarrassing situation with these super agents to occur? It does seem like we're kind of pulled around by external forces more, and whereas we see other clubs that are maybe it's just the narrative and maybe it's just how it seems, but they seem to be calling the shots. Is that a dynamic that you see being the case?
I think it's been said like a lot with the super agents. You need to have those relationships in modern day football. I think that the blurred lines or the issue is when you start doing the majority of your business with one super agent or with one person. I think that's when it becomes a problem. But Arsenal haven't done all their business with just Kia Joorabchian. They've done business with lots of agents over the past few months. And I think since that's kind of been in the press, a lot of the fans have been talking about it. I think we're not going to see that happen as much. I think that hopefully, I think we've seen the end of those questionable deals. I think the Nicola Pepe deal for me, you know, I really want Pepe to become good. I want him to do well at Arsenal because you can tell he's like a shy guy. He's just, you know, he wants to prove himself. But it's frustrating when Arsenal have invested like a lot of money in him, club record signing, and he still hasn't kind of delivered. And you just wonder, when is he going to deliver? And he hasn't really shown any signs. I know he's created a lot of chances in the league for Arsenal this season, but in terms of delivering the goods, he hasn't. And yeah, like just with the super agents thing, I think it's important to have those contacts nowadays. And with Edu, I think the biggest issue is he doesn't have that European football experience. Obviously, he has the experience with Corinthians and South American football. He knows that market really well. I think he needs someone alongside him who has a wealth of knowledge in Europe. There's been a few names mentioned. I think the former Leipzig coach. And yeah, I think Arsenal are looking for a head of operations this summer as well, which answers Chris's question.
I saw that at the end of Chris's article today. You know that a director of football, and you made reference to that a little bit earlier on. Any clue of the type? Are we back in for Monchi? I mean, we got to get Monchi.
Yeah, the classic.
I've never fallen in love with somebody and then fallen out of love with them so quick than we were rumored to get Monchi, because you know I tend to latch onto things very, very quickly, very intensely, and then shove them off when they're done. Kind of like Balogun is starting to be. But I don't know. I think Monchi's the answer. He's got to be, right?
There's loads of good names in Europe that Arsenal could swoop for, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I think they're going to be looking to get that one done in the summer. I mean, they've been looking for a few months now. I mean, the last head of operations they had, I think, was Dick Law, who obviously worked alongside Arsene Wenger. Maybe bring back Dick Law. Who knows?
Oh God,
that was just a joke. But yeah.
Oh God, no.
That's been kept on Twitter already.
We asked the aforementioned Tom Canton actually once on this podcast, like why Bayern Munich would get good players for really, really cheap, and why we would pay way over the odds for players who we shouldn't. And I said, well, we've got Dick Law negotiating these contracts, so they must have the opposite of Dick Law. And I said, what is the opposite of Dick Law? And out of respect to you, Chris, I'm not going to say what he said because I don't want that being added to the lawsuit that you have against him. But it wasn't pretty, and we have a podcast from I think our first or second season named after that. But this is a yes or no answer. Was the conversation that you were referring to with the unnamed agent a polite back and forth, or was it not?
Of course, yeah.
Of course it is. Okay. Last question. I don't want to talk about Willian anymore after this, but does anyone believe? And I've heard this from a lot of people that, and I think it's just people trying to find a reason why he's played as often as he's played, that he's got a stipulation that he has to play a certain number of games. How could that possibly be the case? Bonuses for playing a lot, one thing, but a demand that he's got to play in games? Please tell us that's not true.
I find that hard to believe, to be honest. I think, like you say, when a player is not flavor of the month, I feel like people or fans or whoever, people do try to find reasons to kind of scapegoat that player or kind of put some negativity around him. Willian has not done well for Arsenal at all. He's been probably one of the worst signings I've seen at Arsenal so far. I mean, there's time for that to change. But he doesn't have too long. I think 32, isn't he? Mm-hmm. He signed a 3-year contract.
Yeah, we've only got like 2.5 years left with him to see him turn it around.
Yeah, 2.5 years, but he's not going to get 2.5 years. It's going to be a similar situation to Pepe. If he doesn't start doing it in the next few months and the early part of next season, then they're going to try and look for a way out.
Wasn't he rumored though? Wasn't he rumored to have links away from the club of late? Whatever happened to those rumors?
Yeah, can we bring those back?
Yeah, we can start them tonight. Why not?
So what you're saying is Willian has deals on the table from 3 Greek clubs, 2 Turkish clubs, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't Shakhtar Donetsk, was it? No.
Is Krasnodar? You're thinking of the furthest team away from London. I think it's Krasnodar, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Anyway.
Owen, I know that you wanted to. You have some players in mind that you want to ask about. I just can't get too into incoming players right now because I think our outgoings are so much more important. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate you shedding some light on some of the. I just can't get enough of the whole team dynamic and how that impacts the game. And the reason I keep stressing that is because I know nothing about football. Despite doing hundreds of these podcasts, I know about people. I don't know about football. So anyway, that's great. And we've got about 10 or 15 more minutes to go through some players and transfers. And the gerbil, the football gerbil did start those rumors. F that guy.
Yeah. So, look, Chris, the first one I want to sort of go over with you is William Saliba, because there's a couple of funny little rumours I've heard around the William Saliba situation. And one of them, I don't know how believable this is that the reason that William Saliba wasn't given any minutes was because that there was some sort of handshake deal, brown envelope deal done with Raul Sanllehi that meant after he had made a certain amount of appearances that Raul would receive £5 million. Is there any truth behind that? No.
I've not heard that at all. No,
I've not heard that. Twitter's a wild place, man. With William Saliba, staying with William Saliba, we've heard of sort of difficulties with the relationship between the manager and the hierarchy of the club, and after the cup final that he missed with St Etienne. Have you any more details in that situation? Is that a relationship that's sort of savable at the minute, or do you think that we're likely maybe to see William Saliba be moved on at the end of his loan spell?
I think it's been a really difficult relationship between. Actually, St Etienne were involved in it as well, because St Etienne and Arsenal obviously have a difficult relationship after the breakdown in first with the cup final, not letting him play, and then obviously on deadline day when the move didn't happen, excuse me, both teams blamed each other for not getting the paperwork done in time. With Saliba, I think he's a player who Arteta has already said publicly he just doesn't feel as ready.
Mm-hmm.
When I've spoken to people close to Saliba, I've already written about it a couple of weeks ago. They don't understand why he's not at least being named in the squad, and they kind of questioned, similar to the fans, like why someone like Shkodran Mustafi is getting minutes when he wants to leave. I wrote an exclusive on this at the start of my job in October. Mustafi rejected a contract extension and wanted to leave in the summer. Why is he getting minutes when someone like Saliba could play, especially in the Europa League? You know, there's kind of dead rubber matches against Dundalk, with all due respect to them, like Mulder.
Don't be going too heavy on Dundalk now.
Sorry, I don't want to offend you. But,
he lives in the shadows of Dundalk.
Those weren't particularly testing games for Arsenal. And those were the kind of games where Saliba could have been bedded in, could have got his match fitness or whatever, match sharpness, and he could have played. And the fans could have seen him. I think with Saliba, there's a lot of talk around him because of his price, of course, £28 million. It's a lot of money. And he hasn't played for Arsenal since, at all in the first team. Mm-hmm. He's only played in the under-23s. So
MK Dons, I think.
Yeah, I watched him play against AFC Wimbledon a few weeks ago, and he got sent off. I don't know if you guys seen the tackle. Some people saying it's not a red, but I mean, he went over the top of the ball. I think it was a red card. But before that, he looked good. Like, I was quite impressed with him. You can tell he used to be a attacking midfielder because he always wants to roam forward. He's always kind of beating players as well, which I really like. I've spoken to like other players as well at the club, or another player at the club, and I asked him about Saliba, and he said to me, thinks he's a quality player. So for me, like, people on the training ground or other players think he is quality. We know his quality because he came in for a big amount of money. And in France as well, like the French media, they don't understand why he hasn't been given a chance. So all in all, you just have to, I guess, trust Mikel Arteta's judgment on this. I just don't understand why he wasn't named when I think it was Mari who was injured. Chambers was injured. You know, there was a chance for him to be involved, but he wasn't included. So, but I guess hopefully we get to see him come back for pre-season. Edu said we're definitely going to see that happen. That's what his agent as well has said. So fingers crossed that we get to see him.
I think it's positive signs as well that there was no stipulation within the contract, no option to buy or anything like that, and that they publicly come out and stated that in fact that is the case, that he will be returning. So that's positive news. Someone you mentioned there, Chris, was Callum Chambers, who I think is almost a forgotten man at Arsenal at the minute, and likewise at the opposite end of the pitch, which I'll touch on in a minute. I think that the club have sort of publicly made their decision by offering Rob Holton a contract extension. I know that there's a number of players leaving in the centre-back area at the end of the season, but do you see a future for Callum Chambers at Arsenal? I know he was rumoured to maybe be going to someone like Fulham during the summer, but that fell through. But do you think that we could maybe see Callum Chambers leave either this January or in the summer?
Yeah, I've already written that I think Chambers might leave on loan. Well, I've been told that he could leave on loan this month. He's kind of available. He's one of the few players who could go. He could even be used as like a make weight in a potential deal for a player. I don't know what his kind of like value would be because he hasn't played for a while, hasn't played a regular amount of games. It's a shame because he's a player who I like as well. I think he's homegrown. That's always a positive nowadays. And those kind of players come at a premium. So I think Arsenal could get a decent fee for him in January. I don't know if there's anything close to happening. I haven't heard of any teams interested. You mentioned Fulham. Yeah, that could be a possibility. He did really well there a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think Chambers is one of several players who could go. I think the likes of Willock and Nelson could go out on loan. But I think it's just about the right opportunity as well. Like, I don't think Mikel Arteta is just going to send Nelson off to like a random team in Europe just to get a few minutes. It would be if the opportunity is right for both the player and the club. And at the moment, like, I don't really see Nelson kind of breaking through after he showed a lot of promise earlier on, but he's had a few injury problems and he's found it quite difficult. So we'll have to wait and see. I think there's going to be movement in terms of outgoings over the next couple of weeks, but nothing major. And it's all out there in the media at the moment with the likes of Mesut and Socrates.
Mm-hmm. And don't worry, Mike, I've only got 2 more questions and you can get to your favorite topic.
Good. I just wanted to say on Chambers, I mean, the man's not put a foot wrong since he came back from his long-term injury.
He was brilliant before his injury. I think before his injury under Unai Emery, he was arguably our best player. I remember him in that Aston Villa game at home when we went down to 10 men, and he was absolutely fantastic in that match.
And if we assume that, you know, Luiz is not long-term future, Socrates is gone. You know, Saliba looking unlikely to be a contributor this season or next, maybe. You know, we've got 2 really solid left-footed central defenders holding on the right side. And unless I'm forgetting about somebody, and I'm not including
Mavropanos. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you'd think you'd want to hold on to Chambers. I mean, I would go with 5 central defenders, and Chambers is a guy that you can count on. He may not be, you know, the next coming.
He's versatile too. You know,
he can play defensive mid. He can play right back if he needs to, which, you know, we've got 80 of those guys, but
and he's a cutie. He's a cutie too.
Yeah, no, my daughter will be upset when he's off the team. So
what I would say though about what I would say about Rob Holding, Callum Chambers, is that there's a similar situation with Rob Holding, who, you know, looked like he was about to join Newcastle on loan or permanently in the summer, and then he just turned it around. And the same could happen with Chambers. You never know. He could get a game, could get a cup game later on. They're going to have to rotate this month. So, yeah, you can never write these kind of fringe players off. And you've seen that as well with likes of El Neni as well, who's come in and done a good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully I like him as a player. But somebody who else I like as a player is Balogun. This is breaking my heart. Excluded in the FA Cup completely. It really looks like he's probably on his way out of the club. Do you any updates on that situation? Or
with Balogun, I think my latest update is pretty much what we heard from David Ornstein in terms of him agreeing or close to agreeing with a foreign team. A pre-contract with a foreign team. In terms of the game at the weekend, I double checked to find out if he had any injury or whatever. He was left out by Mikel Arteta, so it's a clear like power play in terms of, you know, I'm not going to play you unless you sign a contract. I don't think we're going to see Balogun play for Arsenal unless he signs a new deal, and I'm not confident at all that he's going to sign a new deal. He's not really showing any signs that he's going to commit. I think part of that is down to the fact he hasn't played, only in the Europa League, a couple of appearances. And he's showing what he can do in those short appearances that he's had. For me, I would look at getting Eddie Nketiah out on a permanent deal and signing up Balogun. I think the difficulty is that they share the same agent. So it's a bit of a difficult one in terms of negotiating, because I think Eddie Nketiah has been at Arsenal from the age of 14, 15. So he probably is not the kind of player who wants to leave right now. I think he might be comfortable where he is. And yeah, I think it's difficult for Arsenal to negotiate with such a tough agent, I'd say, a very good agent. You know, the amount of players they have Elite Project Group, the likes of Jadon Sancho, Reece Nelson, you know, some big players, big names. So they know what they're doing in terms of negotiating. And with Balogun, he obviously wants to get the best deal. Mikel Arteta says he wants to stay, but if he really wanted to stay, he would sign on the dotted line tomorrow.
It's never a good sign, I don't think, when a manager comes out with sort of negotiations ongoing and be so public about bashing the agent. It screams to me that the negotiations aren't going well and they're looking likely not to end very well. And I suppose as well, like you mentioned there, maybe I'm not sure whether it's worth tarnishing the relationship of such an important agent at our club over one player who may turn out to be a fantastic footballer. So,
I think it probably has been tarnished a little bit with those comments, because, like you say, I haven't seen Mikel come out in any press conference and kind of go for an agent like that before. It was quite a bold move, which I'm not sure he would have done that if it was Kia. But like I say, it was a bold move, and it was something that it's probably not going to do him any favors in terms of keeping Balogun. But I guess he was trying to put his foot down and kind of show that he's the club man. He's representing the club, and they're not going to be messed around by any players, regardless of how good they are. So I think you can look at it that way as well.
Mm-hmm. So Bulgarian Gooners asking if who I think changed his name recently to Baloganian Gooner, is he really asking for 100K? And I mean, I can't imagine that he is. I think that's a number that's been thrown out there by a particular YouTuber who is trying to have a big take and a stand. But I mean, what player that hasn't gotten an opportunity to even play at all? I mean, Saka just signed after being in the first team for a long time for what? 60, 40, 60. I mean, it can't be true that Balogun's agent's asking for 100,000 for him a week. So
no, I think what Balogun's agent is asking for is a regular game time for his client, which is normal because he's one of the most exciting young forwards in Europe. But the difficulty is that Arsenal have a lot of good forwards, a lot of senior players, like Aubameyang, Lacazette, even Nketiah is ahead of him. So I think that is the main issue for Arsenal right now. They can't just put him in the team because the agent wants him to get some games. It has to be structured. And the reason he hasn't played so much is because he hasn't signed. And because Arsenal know probably
to catch 22
that if he does well, he keeps playing well, he's scoring goals in the Europa League. In January, he's gonna get a load of offers from the best teams in Europe. He's going to get huge money offers. And he's going to sign a pre-contract with a foreign team and they're going to lose him. Which they're going to probably do either way, but that's what's going to happen. It's like you say, a catch-22. Yeah,
he's our key to winning the Europa League, and without him, I think we're toast. But not to put too fine a point on it, we got to get the Mesut.
Yeah, one last one, and this is all just it's a very quick one because we've covered a lot of outgoings, but people are excited about incoming. So, Chris, I'll rattle off a few names here, and you just tell me whether it's a realistic possibility of acquiring any of these in January.
Put your mouth into the no positioning. Just ready for the cities.
Emi Buendia, Julian Brandt, Isco, and Christian Eriksen. They're probably the four most prominent names that we've seen linked with the club in terms of that attacking midfield position. What do you think the likelihood is that we acquire any of them in January?
I think it's going to be difficult to sign a player on a permanent contract this month because of the difficulties with the finances, which have obviously been talked about with the Bank of England loan. Every single team is finding it so difficult at the moment to even just run a football team. Even with the pay cuts that these players took, they're still earning hundreds of thousands of pounds each month. So it's very expensive and there's no fans coming in. So in terms of Buendia, he's a player that Arsenal like. I've written about him quite a lot. He's kind of a right-sided attacking midfielder who creates a lot of chances. He's one of the top creators in the Championship this season. And Arsenal like him. They've made contact with his representatives, and they've had contact with his representatives for the past few months. And it goes back quite a while. Same agents of Alexis Sanchez, Emi Martinez. And his representatives would be keen for him to push for a move to Arsenal. And if that opportunity arises, he will certainly push it through. I think James Benge from CBS wrote that as well a couple of or week or so ago. So yeah, that's definitely one that could happen. But it's difficult because obviously Norwich don't want to sell him. The possibility is that perhaps a couple of players could be included in a loan deal. So the likes of Joe Willock, Reece Nelson could be included in that deal, which would be a really good deal, I think, for Norwich. If they got a few £1 million and Reece Nelson in exchange for Buendia, I think that's a good deal. But there's been no formal offer as far as I understand so far. And like I say, the most viable option for Arsenal this month is to bring a player in on loan, especially as they're getting all the big salaries out of the door this month. It just makes sense to bring someone in short term until the summer when they know what the situation is going to be as well with COVID, because no one really knows if things are going to be back to normal by then, in terms of the financial situation as well. The other players, I think you mentioned Julian Brandt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Julian Brandt. He's someone who, I think that story was leaked by an intermediary who is trying to kind of get in on the deal. That's what I was told the other day. But he's a player which you can imagine Arsenal would like. He fits the kind of mold of an Arteta player. He's a creative player. He hasn't really done that well at Dortmund since he joined. I spoke to someone really close to him who basically works for him a couple of days ago, and he said that he doesn't think it will happen in terms of Brandt joining Arsenal. He thinks he's more likely to stay and challenge for his place at the club, especially after they've just lost Axel Witsel through injury, I think it was. So I'm not expecting much movement on that. I can't remember the name of the other person you said.
It was Mesut Ozil.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
With whatever time we have left, we got to talk about Mesut, because what we had late last week, we had on Stephen Goff at Soccer Insider, who is a very well-known American journalist covering DC United locally here in Washington, where I live, and around the country. And he made some great points about the rumors to DC United, which, to be fair, they've pretty much gone quiet, and it's all about Fenerbahce now. But it never made sense to me, the DC United thing, because MLS, it's a big country. If he didn't like going to and these are my personal thoughts. If he didn't like going to Newcastle and other places around the country, or away games in Europe, he's not going to want to take a plane to Salt Lake City or Cincinnati or Minnesota and play games at an MLS level. So that never made sense to me. Fenerbahce seems to make sense, but thoughts on that, and then I have one other question about Mesut to ask you.
Yeah, I agree with you. The move didn't make particular sense, but in terms of that story, it came from someone close to Mesut, and we know that they've had on-off talks. I think it was Stephen who even wrote for the Washington Post maybe a year or so ago.
It's been discussed, but
of course, the rumors have been going on for a long time. In fact, I know about that, but the story that I had was that the talks had kind of reopened. Perhaps it might not have been completely clear in the article, but the talks had resumed, and they were leading to sign him. And I think Mesut Ozil's agent has actually come out since and said that it's normal that they'll be talking with several clubs. So it kind of confirms the story. But we know, like you say, Mike, Mesut Ozil is of Turkish heritage. He said before that to his mum that when he leaves Arsenal, he will join Fenerbahce. I mean, like everything, it is the most obvious move in football, really.
Aren't half of the Super League teams in Istanbul to begin with, or more than half? I mean, it just seems that I was like, oh, where's Bursaspor from? I mean, I could be wrong about this, but they're all in Istanbul, more so than in London for England. So I mean, it seems like the right move for him. The question is, canceled contract and go there in January, or are we basically paying Fenerbahce to take him for 6 months and then he's off? Yeah,
I'm not expecting it to be an easy negotiation. In fact, I know it's going to be a standoff between Ozil's agent and Arsenal. There's no way that he's going to take a cut on some of the money, which is fine because it's his money and it's his contract, which he's entitled to. But it's also his footballing legacy, which he doesn't seem too concerned with at the moment, in my opinion. Yeah, I think with Mesut, I wrote in that, or Chris wrote in that interview that I did with him, that he's one of the most technically gifted footballers of my generation, for sure. One of the best. When he wants to be, of course. I think that's been the biggest issue over the past few years. And I think with Mesut, he's the kind of player who just isn't motivated unless he has the best players around him. And at Arsenal, he hasn't had the best players around him. Maybe Alexis Sanchez was an exception to that. Aaron Ramsey, of course. And that's when he flourished in the team, of course. Even I remember his first assist was for Olivier Giroud. He had a nice partnership with him as well. I think that's what we've always found out with Mesut, that he's the kind of player who needs to have top world-class players around him, or he's just not motivated to kind of perform. And yeah, since the contract signed, I think the contract was the biggest obstacle, the biggest difficulty in his kind of career, because once he signed that contract, I think it was Gazidis who left, Wenger left, the club wanted him gone. So the two people who gave him the contract had left the club. So it's understandable. That must have been very frustrating for Mesut that happened, because under Wenger, I think he had a lot of, he was afforded a lot of luxuries. I mean, I've already spoken about it and almost got myself in trouble today. But, I think he is the kind of player who needs like an arm around the shoulder, which is fine. Like lots of players are like that. But I think with Mesut, he is unique. Like I haven't heard of many players who are afforded those kind of luxuries. And look, he's a great player. He's done great things for Arsenal. The assist records in his early years, the FA Cups that he was a part of course.
Yeah.
And I know he'll go down as a great player for Arsenal, but I feel like everything to do with Mesut Ozil is magnified because of his fan base, because of who he is, because of the presence he has on social media. And like I say, that's fine as well. But it doesn't always have to be over the top. And he's a player who was offered the chance to leave the club in the summer. Arsenal offered to pay 50% of his salary for him to go and join another club. And there were teams who were willing to pay the other half.
I did spreadsheets, Chris. I did spreadsheets that showed, what we would pay, what we would save, how he could then top off on it, how he, I included, non-footballing monies. And if he wanted to play, and again, this is my opinion, if he wanted to play football, he would have been playing football since the restart. To me, I just don't, and that's why, I as a DC United supporter, not to the level that I support Arsenal, why I don't particularly want him coming here. I think it's a trap, but it's just, I don't see it. I think if he was that worried about his football legacy, he would be doing what Alexis did with Manchester United, canceling his contract on 500 something a week to play for Inter Milan. He's no hero in my book, but he wanted to play football. Or Cavani, or there are some others that I think are in that category. Maybe Cavani's not the best example, but and what gets me really just aggravated is I call it passive aggressive social media stuff with his tweets every time Arsenal's kicking off, every time Emil Smith-Rowe does well, and it's interesting because it's passive aggressive if you tweet something that is complimenting somebody to make yourself look like the star. But when someone else is tweeting it on your behalf, is it passive aggressive? Or I mean, like he's not. Is he? He's not sitting there with his phone, is he? I mean, with the brand he has, does he even know his Twitter password?
That's a good question. The answer is probably no.
I mean, Trump and Ozil are the two people I wonder about when it comes to that, and we don't have to worry about Trump anymore.
Look, I think it's public knowledge, and people are talking about it today because of the stuff I've written, that I used to work with these guys, so I know how they kind of operate. And in terms of Mesut's social media, of course, he doesn't tweet Piers Morgan stuff about phone hacking. There's no way Mesut Ozil knows anything about that alleged phone hacking, may I say, as well, before I get in trouble. And there's lots of things like that, like lots of tweets we've seen. There's Mesut has a team of people, of course, who manage the social media. He did have an agency in Germany who did his social media, but up until recently, up until those kind of Piers Morgan tweets and stuff, now it's someone who works alongside his agent as a young guy who tweets on his behalf. They obviously have like a WhatsApp group. They decide what is going to be tweeted, what's going to be posted. It's very calculated and it's very PR-y. But that is modern day football, and Mesut Ozil is not the only player in the world who has a PR manager, posting on his behalf. In fact, many players in the Premier League. And when you're as big as Mesut Ozil, it's important to have that, because if you slip up, if you say something dodgy, you need to have professionals running the account. You need to have professional people behind it. Some people will like that. Some people say it's not authentic. But I think for Mesut Ozil, it's worked out quite well, because he has a huge following on social media, because they started very early on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And that's going to benefit him in his career. This won't benefit Arsenal really, but it has benefited Arsenal. In fact, I should say, in terms of the shirt sales, in terms of the exposure which Ozil gives Arsenal as well. Let's not forget that Arsenal are huge. We know that, but Mesut Ozil also gives Arsenal a lot of exposure, and a lot of Arsenal fans are Arsenal fans because of Ozil. So yeah, like it's a kind of a two-way street. But I can understand.
I'm sure they're awaiting their next instructions.
Hopefully I'm not going to be subject of anything like that.
Chris, I will protect you. I will put my big embrace around you, my virtual embrace, and you will be protected from any haters. Look, Chris, we appreciate it. I apologize for the mix up on the time, which is how this ended up being a pop-up podcast. But we really appreciate everyone in the chat who came, and everybody who's watching the replay afterwards. Chris, you're brilliant. Keep up the good work. I follow you religiously, and I take everything you say about the behind the scenes as gospel. Even though Owen, Ian, and Andy, all three of them, give me a hard time over it sometimes. But Chris, where can we find you? Anything you want to promote? That not that we could, promote you better than you promote yourself, but any upcoming articles or pieces that you want to send out there?
I would usually say no and try and be all modest and humble, but I'm going to say yeah. I have a really big interview actually tomorrow, which I did just before this pod, with a former Arsenal manager or former Arsenal head coach. So that's coming out tomorrow lunchtime. So that should be, hopefully that should be a good read.
I'm really finally tracked down Birdie Me.
Is he still around?
We've been trying to get him forever.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to posting that. It's not Bertie Me, but yeah.
Well, everybody look forward to that. We can find you at Chris Wheatley _
Yep, that's right.
Football.London. Thanks again for joining us. Owen, anything else you want to add?
No, thanks for coming on, mate. Absolute pleasure to put a face to the name.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for having me. It's great speaking to you guys, and hopefully you can come on again soon.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you, and catch us tomorrow night, 9:00 p.m. UK time with Yankee Gunner, a.k.a. Elliot from Arsenal Vision. And that is it for us tonight.